Hello and welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Layo Olarinde. Let's begin in Ghana, where at least 6 people have been killed in a tragic crowd crush during a military recruitment exercise in El-Wak Stadium, Accra. This is after thousands of young Ghanaians had gathered hoping to secure a spot in the armed forces. According to a statement released by Ghana's armed forces, the stampede happened before the event officially began and was triggered by an unexpected surge of applicants who breached security protocols and rushed into the gates. Reports say 22 others were injured, including 5 who remain in critical condition. Well, the armed forces have expressed condolences to the families of those who died, pledging a thorough investigation to understand the cause of the incident and to prevent future occurrences. Now to Senegal, where a fierce public power struggle is brewing between President Bassirou Faye and his Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. This tussle appears to be shaking the nation's ruling coalition and raising questions about who truly holds political authority. The crisis ignited earlier this week when President Faye unilaterally announced the removal of Ms. Asatu Mboj. She's a key Sonko ally. He removed her from being the head of the Faye President coalition that secured his 2024 election victory, and he replaced her with his own campaign coordinator, Aminata Toura. The move directly contradicts Prime Minister Sonko's public declaration days earlier that there would be no change at the head of the coalition, and this marks a deliberate challenge to Prime Minister's influence. In a swift and defiant response, Mr. Sonko convened his PASTEF party, which issued a statement rejecting the president's authority to make such a change. The party asserts that President Faye does not have the power to dismiss Ms. Mboj and bluntly declares it shares neither the same values nor the same principles with the new president's new appointee. The African Union and the United Nations are reaffirming the enduring partnership between both organizations as a cornerstone for global peace, security and sustainable development. Speaking at the annual African Union United Nations conference at the UN headquarters in New York, the two leaders expressed deep concern over ongoing armed conflicts, humanitarian crisis, and the erosion of international law, and also underscored the primacy of political solutions through preventive diplomacy, mediation, and dialogue. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on the world not to turn its back on Africa, that's home to nearly 1/5 of humanity, while the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahamoud Yusuf, also warned that the continent's death crisis is undermining its development.
The time has come to reform this financial architecture so it reflects the world of today and better serves the needs of developing countries, particularly in Africa. It must become more inclusive, representative, equitable, and effective. And this means giving developing countries more meaningful participation in global financial institutions and tripling the lending capacity of multilateral development banks and easing debt burdens with new instruments to reduce the cost of capital, to lower borrowing costs, to extend maturity, align debt services to ability to pay, and speed up sovereign debt resolution for countries facing debt distress.
Reassure you, I think the African continent has decided to take its destiny on its hands. And we are definitely working to increase the self-reliance. We are working to mobilize domestic resources for our development programs. And the whole rhetorics and narratives is changing.
Meanwhile, during the conference, the African Union chairperson also denied claims of a genocide against Christians in northern Nigeria, stressing that the situation is being misrepresented. Well, earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to intervene in Nigeria in response to the killing of record numbers of Christians.
Let me say this first. There is no genocide in northern Nigeria. We have issued a communique making clear that what's going on in northern part of Nigeria has nothing to do with the kind of atrocities we see in Sudan or in some part of eastern DRC. I think the complexity of the situation in northern Nigeria should, push us think twice before, declaring such or making such statements. The first victims of Boko Haram are Muslims, not Christians. The first victims, and I'm saying it with documented references. So the complexity in the northern part of Nigeria should not be taken, that easily. So what we are saying to those statements, with regard to those statements, is that the African continent is very complex. It's not that easy to describe those situations with such, very easy words that can be used, in a not reasonable way. That's why the African Union continent, the African Union Commission are very clear about that. We made it clear in our statement and communique, and we would like really to stress again that there is no genocide in northern Nigeria.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is hitting back at U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to skip the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg later this month, saying the U.S.'s absence is their loss. Earlier, President Trump said that no U.S. official would attend the gathering over widely discredited claims that white people are being persecuted in South Africa. President Ramaphosa says the boycott would not prevent the meeting from going ahead, adding that the U.S. is giving up the very important role that they should be playing as the biggest economy in the world. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has also rejected the accusations by President Trump that the government is committing genocide against white South Africans. He says this is false and dangerous.
At a time when South Africa, like many nations around the world, is grappling with intensifying global competition and mounting economic and political divisions. It is against this fractured landscape that South Africa has been falsely accused of genocide against its white community and threatened with punitive sanctions based on falsehood. Let me thank the many communities here at home and around the world that have rejected the false narrative and the fear, hate, and disinformation they represent, and instead chosen to defend the principles of solidarity and equality. The members of the African community who recently came out publicly refusing to be used as a pawn or portrayed as victims provide us with a timely reminder of our responsibility to forge collective prosperity grounded in truth, justice, and mutual respect.
Let's check in on the civil war in Sudan. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called for international action to cut off the supply of weapons to the country's paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, who are accused of mass killings in El Fasher, Darfur. At the end of a G7 foreign ministers meeting in Canada, Mr. Rubio said the RSF had committed systematic atrocities, including murder, rape and sexual violence against civilians. America's top diplomat also added that women and children had been targeted in acts of the most horrific kind by the RSF in El Fasher. Mr. Rubio reaffirms the U.S.'s resolve to do everything possible to bring the war to an end and are encouraging partner nations to join in the fight. Staying with Sudan, the United Nations Gender Equality Agency warns that rape is being systematically used as a weapon, and simply being a woman is a strong predictor of hunger, violence and death. UN Women Regional Director for East and Southern Africa, Anna Mutavati, says the situation is worsening dramatically as fighting spreads around the city, prompting mass displacement. Thousands of women and girls are said to have fled to other localities in North Darfur, including Tawila, which is 70 kilometers away from Koma and Malit, where a humanitarian presence is. Ms. Mutavati calls for an end to the violence and for broader humanitarian access, and also for an increased support to women-led soup kitchens and other aid providers.
To us from El Fasher, the heart of Sudan's latest catastrophe, tell us that they've endured starvation, they've endured displacement, rape, and bombardment. Pregnant women have given birth in the streets as the last remaining maternity hospitals were looted and destroyed. What the women tell us is that on their horrific journey, they report that that every step that they have taken to fetch water, to collect firewood, or to stand in a food line has carried a high risk of sexual violence. There is mounting evidence that rape is being deliberately and systematically used as a weapon of war. Women's bodies, ladies and gentlemen, have just become a crime scene in Sudan. There are no safe spaces that are left, nowhere for women to gather safely, to seek protection, or even access even the most basic psychosocial care. Basic dignity has also collapsed. In North Darfur today, a single packet of sanitary towels costs roughly $27. Meanwhile, families that are receiving cash assistance, humanitarian cash assistance, get slightly below $150 per month for a family of, an average family of 6 people. Of women do not meet.
In neighboring South Sudan, the United Nations Women Executive Director Sima Bahous is advocating for continued peacekeeping support, even as the country grapples with a gender-based violence that is threatening 2.7 million people. Ms. Bahous says this menace makes it essential that the peacekeeping support continues. Back in 2024, the UN mission in South Sudan documented 260 cases of conflict-related sexual violence, including rape, sexual slavery, forced abortion, and forced marriage, with the highest number recorded in Western Equatoria State. She also described a recent incident in Warrap State where armed youth surrounded a girls' boarding school seeking revenge for a cattle raid. According to her, 100 schoolgirls were trapped inside. Fortunately, UN peacekeepers intervened and de-escalated the situation.
Sudan has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the region, with an estimated 2.7 million people at risk. 2024 saw UNMISS document 260 cases of conflict-related sexual violence, including rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, forced abortion, and forced marriage, with the highest number recorded in Western Equatoria State. A few months ago, a group of armed youth surrounded a girls' boarding school in Warrap State. They sought revenge for a cattle raid. 100 schoolgirls were trapped inside. They feared abduction, or worse. They feared it with good reason. Fortunately, UN peacekeepers intervened. They de-escalated the situation. They freed the girls. For those 100 girls, those peacekeepers could not have been more essential, nor their courage and skill more life-changing. Those 100 girls would find it incomprehensible that the mandates and resources behind those peacekeepers might somehow be in question. Excellencies, in this fragile environment, withdrawal of resources and capacity is imprudent at best, catastrophic at worst.
The government of South Sudan reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the full implementation of the revitalized peace agreement of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, despite the numerous challenges in which all of you here have mentioned. The revitalized peace agreement remains the only way out of the transition and the only way into stability in South Sudan.
U.S. government is on the brink of reopening this week. However, after more than 43 days of closure, there have been significant impacts on all Americans and the Nigerian community in the United States, especially those within the healthcare industry, as the Obamacare healthcare provision is not included in the pending bill that will reopen the government. Well, our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird had an interview with Dr. Susan Edionwe, president of Nigerian Physicians Advocacy Group, on the impacts of the government shutdown on the Nigerian community.
Dr. Susan, president of Nigerian Physician Advocacy Group, we thank you for being a part of this conversation, as we know it's a really busy time in the United States and a really challenging time for many Americans. As a Nigerian American and as a physician, we know the government shutdown has impacted across the board, not just federal workers. Tell us how your organization is responding to, the Nigerian community is responding to this government shutdown. Obviously, we know there's the healthcare debate that's a part of this conversation and this shutdown. We also know that, people can't necessarily get to the doctors as frequently because of co-pays, they can't pay those. What's the real impact and how's the Nigerian community responding?
I think the impact is it's significant, and it is similar to what a lot of Americans are, the reality a lot of Americans are facing. Although the Nigerian American diaspora community is considered one of the more economically successful demographics in the United States, it's still impacting us, it's still hitting us. We have many people who are struggling with bringing in the types of incomes that they were bringing in before because of some of the shutdowns. We have a lot of people who work within the government who were affected by the shutdown. From the healthcare perspective, we're a physicians advocacy group. Many of our members are dealing with real practice issues. Many of our members service demographics that are high Medicaid volumes. They're seeing impact to their practice. I myself, I am a physician with my own practice, and I'm seeing it affect my patients in my community. So, I think nobody is exempt from the consequences of the shutdown. Nobody's exempt from the healthcare issue. The Nigerian Physicians Advocacy Group is the 501c4 affiliate of the Association of Nigerians in the Americas. And so through our parent organization, we do a lot of outreach, reaching the communities, giving, to those in need, providing food, providing, any kind of benefit we can to the community. So there is that avenue that we explore and we utilize.
Authorities in Kenya say some 200 Kenyans are fighting for Russia in its war against Ukraine, and more could be recruited into the conflict. Among them are former members of Kenya's security forces. According to Kenya's Foreign Affairs Minister Musalia Mudavadi, some of those who have been rescued say they were forced to assemble drones and handle chemicals without proper training or protective gear. Last week, President William Ruto requested the Ukrainian government to secure the release of Kenyans currently held in the conflict zone. The Ukrainian government says about 1,400 citizens from across Africa are fighting alongside Russian forces in Ukraine, with some of them recruited through deception. The United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council has elected Phoebe Okoa of Kenya as a member of the International Court of Justice with immediate effect after various rounds of voting. The other candidates include Dr. Olufemi Elias of Nigeria, Charles Jallow of Sierra Leone, and Paul Kuruk of Ghana. Nigeria and Ghana withdrew their candidacies after several rounds of voting failed to reach the required majority on both chambers. Well, in the final round, Okoa obtained 106 votes and against Jallow's 79 votes in the General Assembly and 8 votes to 7 in the Council. Well, Ms. Okoa succeeds George Abdulkawi Yusuf, who resigned as a member of the court with effect from 30th September 2025. She will hold office for the remainder of her predecessor's term, which was due to expire on the 5th of February 2027.
Kenya, 106 votes. Charles Jallow, Sierra Leone, 79 votes. Phoebe Okowa of Kenya has obtained an absolute majority in the Assembly. As a result of the independent voting in the Assembly and the Council, Phoebe Okowa of Kenya has obtained an absolute majority in both organs. Phoebe Okowa of Kenya is therefore duly elected a member of the International Court of Justice to serve for a term of office commencing today, 12 November 2025, and ending on February 5th, 2027.
The 8th Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, NDIS, has commenced in Abuja with renewed calls for deeper collaboration between Nigerians in the diaspora and state governments to fast-track inclusive growth and sustainable national development. This year's summit is themed Fast-Tracking Regional and National Development by Mobilizing Diaspora Investment, and it brought together top government officials, investors, entrepreneurs and development partners committed to unlocking the vast potential of the Nigeria diaspora for economic transformation. In his goodwill message, the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, and Governor of Kwara State, Abdulrahman Abdulrazak, emphasized that Nigeria's subnationals are critical to translating diaspora capital into measurable impact at the grassroots. Well, a group of South African artists known as the Alexandra River Collective is helping to keep their hometown clean by creating one-of-a-kind artworks from waste collected from the local Juskei River. The volunteer cleaning group called the Alexandra Water Warriors help the 13-member Alexandra River Collective in their mission by providing materials for their masterpieces. They also noted that the positive impact on the local environment of the river is already being felt, relishing their chance to use the media to express their creativity. And as we end the program today, here's our fun fact about the continent. Did you know that of all 7 continents in the world, Africa has the most countries with 54 recognized sovereign nations? The most populous country in Africa is Nigeria, which has a population of more than 200 million people. And the smallest and least populous of African countries is the island country of the Seychelles, located in the Indian Ocean. And that's the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olaringi.